The emergency sirens across Tassara began their wailing at exactly 14:47 local time, and Mira felt her heart sink in unison with the sound. She rushed through the crystalline corridors of the council building, her luminescent skin flickering with anxiety as other Avrans scattered in confusion around her. Nobody could remember the last time those sirens had been activated. Their civilization had known peace for 3 generations. Council leader Mira, "We have confirmed reports from Halcyon 7, a young technician named Vel said, his voice shaking as he pulled up the transmission on the central display. The holographic image showed chaos. Buildings burned in the thin atmosphere of their mining colony. Ships with sharp, aggressive designs circled overhead like predators. The Krill Dominion has begun orbital bombardment. They're demanding our surrender and offering enslavement as an alternative to extinction." Mira watched the footage and felt something cold settle in her chest. The Avran had no weapons beyond simple peacekeeping tools. They had negotiators, mediators, and philosophers. They had 7 different councils dedicated to conflict resolution, but they had nothing that could stop warships from turning their colony into rubble. "How many people are on Halcyon 7? She asked quietly. 50,000 souls, council leader, mostly miners and their families. Some scientists studying the moon's unique geology. 50,000. Mira closed her large eyes and tried to think. The Krill were known throughout the sector as brutal but efficient. They took what they wanted and enslaved those too weak to resist. Most civilizations simply avoided their territory and hoped to remain beneath their notice. The Avran had been careful, so careful to maintain neutrality and pose no threat to anyone. "Have we contacted the neighboring systems?" Mira asked, already knowing the answer. "Yes, council leader. The Eldari expressed their sympathies but said they cannot risk war with the Krill. The Nari have gone silent. The Federation of United Worlds has closed their communication channels entirely." Of course they had. Everyone was afraid. Everyone chose their own survival over helping others. Mira understood the logic even as it made her sick. But understanding did not save the 50,000 people currently hiding in shelters while bombs fell from the sky. "Then we send a broad-spectrum distress call," Mira said firmly. "All frequencies, all known languages. Someone in this galaxy must have the courage to help." The technicians worked quickly assembling the message. It was simple and direct because there was no time for elaborate diplomacy. "This is the Avran Collective. Our colony on Halcyon 7 is under attack by the Krill Dominion. Population of 50,000 civilians requires immediate assistance. We have no military capability. Coordinates are attached to this transmission. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help." Vel activated the transmission array, and the message began its journey outward through space, bouncing off relay stations and traveling through hyperspace channels. It would reach hundreds of systems within hours. Mira could only hope that somewhere out there, someone would care enough to respond. 27 light-years away, in a region of space most civilized species considered barely explored, the message arrived at a monitoring station orbiting a blue and green planet. The technician on duty, a tired woman named Sarah who was 6 hours into a 12-hour shift, nearly missed it. Distress calls from unknown species were rare but not unheard of. Usually they were false alarms or requests for minor assistance. But something about this one made her pause. She played the message again, listening to the translation software convert the alien language into English. "An attack, 50,000 people, no military capability." Sarah forwarded the message up the chain of command and waited. Within 30 minutes, the United Defense Council of Earth was reviewing the message. The debate was intense. Humanity had only been traveling between stars for 47 years. They were newcomers to the galactic community, and most established civilizations treated them with polite condescension at best and open disdain at worst. Getting involved in alien conflicts seemed like a terrible idea. But Admiral Diana Ross, who commanded the heavy cruiser Relentless, had a different perspective. She sat in the council chamber via video link and listened to the politicians argue about protocols and diplomatic consequences. Finally, she interrupted. "With respect, counselors, we're debating the wrong question. The question isn't whether we should get involved in galactic politics. The question is whether we're the kind of species that ignores 50,000 people being murdered because it's inconvenient." The room fell silent. One of the counselors, an older man with gray hair, spoke carefully. "Admiral Ross, we don't know these people. We don't know their culture, their politics, or why they're being attacked. We could be walking into a situation we don't understand." Then we'll figure it out when we get there, Diana said flatly. But we'll do it while those people are still alive to explain it to us. I'm taking the Relentless along with the Valiant and the Tempest. We can be at those coordinates in 6 days if we push the jump drives. I'm asking for authorization, but I'm going whether I get it or not. Another long silence. Then the council voted. The authorization passed by a single vote. 12 hours later, 3 human warships activated their jump drives and vanished into hyperspace, heading toward a moon called Halcyon 7, where people they had never met were fighting for survival against an enemy they had never heard of. The crews didn't know they were about to change the entire galaxy's understanding of what humanity represented. On the bridge of the Relentless, Diana stood near the tactical display and watched the countdown to their arrival. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Raj Patel, worked quietly at his console, preparing weapon systems and running combat simulations. "Do you think they'll still be alive when we get there?" he asked without looking up. Diana didn't answer immediately. She thought about Earth, about humanity's long history of violence and survival, about every time their species had faced extinction and somehow clawed their way back. "If they're anything like us," she finally said, "they'll find a way to hold on. And if they're not like us, well, that's why we're going. Someone has to." The jump drive hummed and the stars stretched into lines of light. 6 days of jumping through hyperspace felt like an eternity when you knew people were dying at your destination. Diana had barely slept, spending most of her time reviewing what little information Earth's databases contained about the Krill Dominion and the Avran Collective. The Krill were apparently a mid-tier power, aggressive but not overwhelmingly strong. The Avran were described as peaceful traders and artists, completely non-threatening. It seemed like a typical case of a bully targeting someone weak. Reality hit them the moment they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Halcyon 7 system. The tactical display lit up with contacts immediately. 6 Krill warships surrounded the small moon, their weapons firing intermittently at the surface. The designs were sleek and angular, covered in dark metal that absorbed light. They looked dangerous, and they probably were by galactic standards. "All ships, battle stations," Diana ordered calmly. "Communications hail both the Krill fleet and the colony. Let's see who wants to talk." The response from the Krill came first. The image that appeared on the main screen showed a being that looked vaguely reptilian, with dark scales and sharp features. His eyes were cold and calculating. "Unknown vessels, this is Commander Voth of the Krill Dominion. You are interfering in an authorized subjugation operation. Identify yourselves immediately. This is Admiral Diana Ross of the Earth vessel Relentless. We received a distress call from the Avran colony. We're here to provide assistance." Voth stared at her for a long moment, then seemed to access some database. His expression shifted to something like surprise mixed with contempt. "Earth, you are from a Class 12 Deathworld. Your species should barely have mastered fire, let alone void travel. This is impressive but irrelevant. The Avran are now property of the Dominion. Leave immediately or share their fate." Diana had no idea what a Class 12 Deathworld meant, but the tone was clear enough. "Commander Voth, I'm going to give you one opportunity to withdraw peacefully. Take your ships and leave this system. No one else needs to die today." The Krill commander actually laughed. It was an unpleasant sound. "You threaten me? 3 primitive ships against 6 Dominion warships. Perhaps Deathworld evolution has affected your ability to count. This is your final warning, human. Depart or be destroyed." Diana looked at Raj, who had been running calculations since they arrived. He gave her a small nod and a cold smile. "Admiral, I'm ready when you are." "Commander Voth," Diana said, her voice dropping to something hard and final. "You had your chance. All ships, weapons free. Take them." The Krill opened fire first, confident in their superiority. Bright blue energy beams lanced across space toward the human vessels. The shields on the Relentless flared as they absorbed the impact, and alarms beeped warnings about energy levels. But the ship held steady. "Return fire," Diana ordered. What happened next would have seemed brutal and primitive to most galactic civilizations. The Relentless and her sister ships didn't use elegant energy weapons. They used railguns, massive electromagnetic accelerators that fired dense metal slugs at incredible speeds. They used missiles with nuclear warheads, weapons most species considered barbaric relics of a savage past. But savage or not, they were devastatingly effective. The first railgun volley caught the nearest Krill ship completely off guard. The slugs punched through their shields like they weren't even there and tore massive holes in the hull. Atmosphere vented into space in huge plumes. The ship tried to turn, tried to flee, but a nuclear missile from the Tempest caught it amidships. The explosion was brief and brilliant, and then there was only debris. Target destroyed, Raj reported, his voice professionally calm. Engaging second target. The Krill fleet scattered in confusion. Their energy weapons were designed for fighting other civilized species who used similar technology. They had never encountered kinetic weapons on this scale. Another ship exploded under concentrated fire from all 3 human vessels. The remaining 4 Krill warships tried to retreat, but they weren't fast enough. One ship, badly damaged and losing power, fell into Halcyon 7's gravity well. It crashed on the surface in a spectacular fireball visible even from orbit. 2 more ships managed to jump away into hyperspace. The last one surrendered, its crew apparently deciding that survival was preferable to pride. The entire battle had lasted less than 8 minutes. Ceasefire, Diana ordered. Secure the surrendered vessel. Communications now try to reach the colony. This time the response was faster. A holographic image appeared showing a tall, elegant being with pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly. Her eyes were large and dark, and she looked exhausted and shocked in equal measure. This is Council Leader Mira, of the Avren Collective. Are you truly here to help us? Yes, Council Leader, Diana said gently. We received your distress call. I'm sending medical teams and supplies down to the surface. Is your population safe? Most are in underground shelters. Some were caught in the initial bombardment. We have wounded. Mira paused, her expression confused. But you came. No one comes when the Krill attack. And you're from a Deathworld. I don't understand. There was that word again. Council Leader, I apologize for my ignorance, but what exactly is a Deathworld? Mira looked even more confused now. You don't know? Your own planet is classified as Class 12. One of the most hostile environments in known space. High gravity, extreme weather, predatory wildlife, deadly diseases. Most species evolve on stable worlds with gentle conditions. Deathworlders are usually violent and aggressive because they have to be to survive. We never expected one to answer a call for help. Deathworld species usually only care about conquest. Diana absorbed this information and felt a strange mix of pride and sadness. So humanity's home was considered a nightmare planet by galactic standards. That explained a lot about how other species seem to view them. Council Leader Mira, I think you're about to learn that humans are full of surprises. We're not here to conquer anyone. We're here because you needed help and we were able to provide it. She turned to her crew. Dr. Tanaka, prepare your medical team. Lieutenant Patel, send a shuttle to collect survivors from the crashed Krill ship. I want prisoners treated humanely. Admiral, Raj said carefully, that crashed ship still has power. I'm detecting movement. They might be fortifying a position. Diana sighed. Of course, it couldn't be simple. How many survivors? Unknown. Could be anywhere from 20 to 100. Their ship was badly damaged but not completely destroyed. She made a decision quickly. Contact Sergeant Hayes, tell him to prepare his Marines. We're going down to the surface. If the Krill want to continue fighting, we'll accommodate them. But I want prisoners if possible. We need information about what we're dealing with. On the surface of Halcyon 7, in the wreckage of their crashed warship, the surviving Krill soldiers were indeed preparing defensive positions. They had sent out their own distress signal to the Dominion. They expected rescue or revenge, possibly both. What they didn't expect was that the humans would come for them directly, and they certainly didn't expect what happened when Sergeant Omar Hayes and his Marines arrived. The Avren underground shelters were surprisingly comfortable, despite being designed for emergencies. Mira led Diana through the tunnels, explaining their situation while medical teams from the Relentless worked to help the wounded. The casualties were less severe than expected, because the Krill bombardment had been designed to intimidate rather than exterminate. They wanted slaves, not corpses. We are grateful beyond words, Mira said for perhaps the 10th time. But I must ask, Admiral Ross, what will you do about the crashed vessel? Their survivors are armed and dangerous. Our peacekeepers cannot handle military threats. Diana was about to answer when Vel, the young technician she had met earlier, came running down the corridor with a tablet displaying sensor data. Council Leader, the humans are approaching the crash site with soldiers. They're going to attack. Attack? Mira looked horrified. But surely they can negotiate? The Krill might surrender peacefully if given the chance. Diana and Raj exchanged glances. The Admiral spoke carefully, trying not to sound condescending. Council leader, the Krill have fortified their position and are preparing for combat. They've made their intentions clear. My Marines will handle this. But there will be violence, Mira said quietly. Death, probably, Diana admitted. But less death than if we leave them to regroup and attack your colony again. Sometimes violence is the least harmful option available. Before Mira could respond, Dr. Yuki Tanaka emerged from one of the medical stations. She looked tired but satisfied. Admiral, the wounded are stable. Most of their injuries were from falling debris and structural collapse. Their physiology is interesting, though. May I show you something? She led them to a private room where a Krill soldier lay sedated on a medical bed. He was restrained but unconscious. Yuki pulled up scans on her tablet. I've been comparing their biology to human norms. They're stronger than the Avran, definitely, but compared to us, their bone density is about 60% of human standard. Muscle fiber is efficient but designed for low-gravity environments. Their cardiovascular system is actually quite fragile by our standards. What does that mean in practical terms? Diana asked. It means that what we consider normal physical exertion would exhaust them quickly. A human punch would likely break their bones. Our gravity alone would be oppressive to them. Yuki paused, looking thoughtful. Admiral, I think we need to understand something. We keep hearing about deathworlds, but I don't think we appreciate what that means. Earth isn't just dangerous. It's extraordinarily hostile compared to most life-bearing planets. Raj pulled up galactic classification data on his own tablet. I've been researching while we travel. Listen to this. Earth has 9.8 meters per second squared gravity. Most habitable worlds average 6 to 7. We have violent weather systems, including hurricanes with winds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. We have predators that can kill and eat creatures our own size. We have diseases that regularly attempt to wipe out our species. And we evolved anyway. Mira was listening with what could only be described as mounting horror. Your world tried to kill you constantly and you survived. More than survived, Yuki said quietly. We thrived. We became persistence hunters who can run prey to exhaustion. We can regulate our body temperature through sweating, which is apparently rare. We can heal from injuries that would kill most species. We can think clearly while in severe pain. And perhaps most importantly, we can eat an incredibly diverse range of foods, including things that are toxic to most other species. To demonstrate, Yuki pulled out a protein bar from her kit and took a bite. It contained peppers, garlic, and various acids that made it spicy and tangy. She offered it to Mira, who took a tiny, polite bite and immediately started coughing. That's poison, Mira gasped, her skin flashing bright red in distress. How can you eat poison? It's not poison to us, Yuki explained. It's just food. Spicy food. A lot of things that other species find toxic are actually enjoyable to humans. Before the conversation could continue, Sergeant Omar Hayes contacted them over the radio. His voice was calm and professional, the sound of someone who had done this many times before. Admiral Ross, we're in position around the crash site. The Krill have approximately 40 soldiers fortified in and around their vessel. They're using energy rifles and have set up defensive barriers, requesting permission to engage. Rules of engagement, Sergeant? Diana asked. Accept surrender if offered, but assume hostile intent. We'll use smoke and suppression tactics to minimize our casualties. Estimated time to secure the position is 30 minutes. Permission granted. Keep me updated. Mira looked between Diana and the radio in disbelief. You're just letting them attack? Without trying to negotiate? Council leader, Diana said gently. We did try to negotiate. Before the battle, I offered Commander Voth the chance to leave peacefully. He chose violence. His soldiers on the ground have made the same choice. We're not starting this fight. We're finishing it. What happened over the next 30 minutes would become legendary among the Avran, told and retold as the moment they understood what Deathworlders were truly capable of. The Marines approached the crash site using tactics that seemed bizarre to anyone watching through sensors. They moved in small teams using terrain for cover, coordinating with hand signals and brief radio bursts. They deployed smoke grenades that obscured vision but didn't affect their own sensors. The Krill, used to honorable ship-to-ship combat where both sides fired until one surrendered, found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't see clearly. Human soldiers appeared from unexpected angles, fired precisely aimed bursts and disappeared again. The Krill soldiers, already exhausted from the crash and struggling in gravity 20% higher than their homeworld, began to panic. One Marine took a direct hit from an energy rifle and fell. The Krill soldier who shot him expected the target to be dead or at least incapacitated. Instead, the Marine got back up, checked his armor, and returned fire. The energy blast had burned through his armor, but the wound, while painful, was not immediately life-threatening. The Marine kept fighting. That broke the Krill morale entirely. They surrendered en masse, Hayes reported back. Crash site secured. 42 prisoners. 3 enemy casualties, 1 Marine wounded but mobile. No friendly deaths. In the shelter, Mira listened to the report and turned to Diana with an expression of mixed awe and fear. You fight like predators. Coordinated, efficient, ruthless when necessary, but willing to show mercy. That's exactly what we are, Diana agreed. We're the species Earth created. We learn to hunt in packs, to use tools to communicate complex ideas, all while everything around us tried to kill us. We don't fight to be cruel, Council Leader. We fight to survive. And right now, your people's survival is linked to ours because we chose to answer your distress call. Raj's tactical display suddenly lit up with new contacts, dozens of them appearing at the edge of the system. His face went pale. Admiral, we have new arrivals. I count 30 Krill warships, heavy cruiser class and above. They're broadcasting a message. The message was simple and direct. Human vessels, this is Admiral Karth of the Krill Dominion. You have destroyed our ships and attacked our soldiers. This transgression demands severe punishment. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. You have 1 hour to comply. Mira's luminescent skin went completely dark, a sign of absolute terror. 30 warships against 3 human vessels. Even with their surprising effectiveness in combat, those odds were impossible. Diana studied the tactical display for a long moment, then smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. It was the smile of someone who had just decided to do something dangerous and possibly stupid. Raj, what's our status? All ships combat ready, though Tempest took some damage earlier. Ammunition at 80%. Jump drives need 4 hours to recharge fully. Good. Record a message to Admiral Karth. Diana waited for the indicator light. Admiral Karth, this is Admiral Ross. You seem to misunderstand the situation. We didn't come here to fight you. We came here to help the Avran. But if you insist on fighting, we'll oblige you. Fair warning, though. We're from a death world. We've been fighting and dying and surviving for thousands of years. You brought 30 ships. I was honestly hoping you'd bring more. You have 1 hour to leave this system. After that, we start shooting. Ross out. Mira looked at her like she had gone completely insane. Admiral, that's suicide. Diana shrugged. Probably. But here's what you need to understand about Deathworlders, Council Leader. We don't give up. Ever. Even when we should. Admiral Karth watched the human transmission 3 times, trying to understand if it was bravado or genuine confidence. His tactical officers assured him it had to be bravado. 3 ships against 30 was not a battle. It was an execution. The humans had been lucky in their first engagement, catching Commander Voth by surprise with primitive weapons. That advantage was gone now. Still, something about the human admiral's smile bothered him. She looked like someone who knew something he didn't. Karth ordered his fleet to maintain formation and advance slowly, giving his sensors time to analyze the human vessels thoroughly. If there was a trick, he would find it. Aboard the Relentless, Diana was absolutely terrified, but she had learned long ago not to let that show. Fear was useful. It kept you alert, but showing fear got people killed. She gathered her senior staff in the strategy room and laid out the situation bluntly. We can't win a straight fight, so we won't fight straight. The Krill expect a traditional battle. Ship versus ship, honor and tactics and superior numbers. We're going to do something they've probably never seen before. Raj pulled up a tactical map of the system. The asteroid belt between Halcyon 7 and the gas giant. Dense concentration of rocks, lots of sensor interference. If we can draw them in there, we can use the environment against them. They won't chase us into an obvious trap. Lieutenant Foster from the Valiant pointed out over the video link. They will if they think we're running. Diana countered. We make it look like we're fleeing to the belt for cover. Natural response for an outnumbered force. Once they follow us in, we use our nuclear missiles as mines. Plant them on asteroids, detonate on proximity. The explosions will create debris clouds that will tear through their hulls. That's assuming they follow us, Foster said doubtfully. Diana smiled grimly. They'll follow. I'm going to transmit something that will make sure of it. She recorded a new message, but this one wasn't meant for Admiral Karth directly. It was broadcast on all frequencies, unencrypted, meant to be intercepted. In the message, Diana explained Earth's history to the Krill. Every war, every genocide, every time humanity had nearly destroyed itself. The nuclear weapons they had built, the biological weapons, the chemical weapons,
the environmental catastrophes they had survived. "We are not a peaceful species," Diana said into the camera.
"We are not civilized by your standards. We are the product of a world that tried to kill us every single day, and we are very, very good at killing back. You wanted to know what a death world produces? Let me show you." The message included footage, historical records of Earth's wars. Hiroshima and Nagasaki, trenches of the world wars, chemical attacks. It was brutal and honest and terrifying, and it had exactly the effect Diana wanted. Admiral Karth watched the message and felt something he rarely experienced, a cold uncertainty in his gut. But he also felt anger. How dare this primitive species threaten the Krill Dominion with their barbaric history? They needed to be taught a lesson about the galactic order. When the human ships began retreating toward the asteroid belt, Karth ordered his fleet to pursue. The first sign that something was wrong came when the lead Krill cruiser exploded without warning. One moment it was navigating through the asteroids, the next it was the expanding ball of plasma and debris. Then another ship exploded, and another. "They've mined the asteroids," Karth's tactical officer reported unnecessarily. "Nuclear devices, proximity detonation. All ships, evasive maneuvers," Karth ordered. But evasive maneuvers in an asteroid field were difficult, and the nuclear mines were well placed. The explosions created cascading debris that tore through shields and hulls. Ships collided with rocks they were trying to avoid. Chaos spread through the Krill formation. The human ships, meanwhile, moved through the belt like they had mapped every rock. They probably had, Karth realized. They had spent the hour preparing this trap instead of running. "Focus fire on the human vessels," Karth commanded. "Ignore the mines. Destroy them." But that was easier said than done. The human ships were using the asteroids for cover, appearing just long enough to fire their railguns before disappearing again. And those railguns were devastating. One shot could cripple a Krill ship if it hit the right spot. The Krill energy weapons were more elegant but less destructive against the heavy armor the humans used. Then the humans did something that Karth would have considered insane if he hadn't witnessed it himself. One of their ships, the Tempest, accelerated directly at a Krill battlecruiser on a collision course. The Krill ship tried to turn, but it was too large and too slow. At the last moment, Karth saw escape pods jettison from the human ship. The Tempest slammed into the battlecruiser at full speed. Both ships vanished in the explosion that lit up the asteroid belt like a small sun. A kinetic impact at that velocity was like a bomb made of pure momentum. "They're using their own ships as weapons," Karth's tactical officer said in horror. "And they evacuated the crew first. They planned this." Diana watched the Tempest sacrifice from the bridge of the Relentless. It hurt to lose a ship, even if most of the crew had survived. But it was necessary. The battlecruiser had been coordinating the Krill fleet's movements. Without it, their formation would fall apart. "All ships concentrate fire on their command vessels," she ordered. "Target their communications arrays. Make them blind and deaf." The Avran, watching from the surface of Halcyon 7, couldn't believe what they were seeing. Vel had set up a sensor array to track the battle, and Mira stood beside him, horrified and fascinated in equal measure. "They're fighting like nothing I've ever seen," Vel whispered. "No honor, no formal tactics. Just pure survival instinct. They're fighting like predators," Mira corrected. "Coordinated pack hunters using every advantage. The Krill are used to honor and tradition. The humans don't care about honor. They care about winning." Dr. Tanaka had joined them, and she spoke quietly. "It's not that we don't care about honor. It's that we define it differently. On Earth, honor means protecting those who can't protect themselves. Honor means keeping your word when you say you'll help someone. The method doesn't matter as much as the result." In orbit, the battle was turning. The Krill had lost 18 ships to tactics they had never encountered. Their formation was broken, their communications disrupted. Some ships were trying to flee. Others were trying to regroup. None of them were fighting effectively. Then Hayes and his Marines did something that would become legendary. They used combat shuttles to board a Krill command ship. The Krill had shields against energy weapons and armor against explosions, but they had never designed defenses against boarding actions. Who would be crazy enough to try that in space combat? Humans, apparently. The Marines cut through the hull with plasma torches and poured into the ship. The Krill soldiers inside tried to fight, but they were facing opponents who had trained in environments more hostile than a spaceship corridor. The Marines moved through the vessel like they owned it. Clearing deck after deck, Sergeant Hayes personally captured Admiral Karth, the Krill admiral, had been trying to coordinate his remaining ships from the bridge when human soldiers appeared from 3 different access points simultaneously. He reached for his sidearm, but Hayes was faster. The sergeant's rifle was aimed at Karth's head before the admiral could draw. "Don't," Hayes said simply. "Just don't." Karth looked at the human and saw something that made him lower his weapon. The human's eyes were completely calm. This wasn't anger or hatred. This was just another job. The admiral realized that humans didn't fight emotionally. They fought professionally. That was somehow more terrifying. Diana received the message from Hayes and allowed herself a moment of relief. "Admiral Karth, this is Admiral Ross. Your fleet is broken. You've lost nearly 2/3 of your ships. The rest are fleeing. You have one chance to end this without more death. Order your remaining vessels to withdraw from this system and broadcast a message to the Krill Dominion. Tell them that humans don't ignore distress calls, and tell them that we don't lose." There was a long pause. Then Karth's voice came over the communication channel, defeated and exhausted. "This is Admiral Karth to all Krill vessels. Withdraw from the system immediately. Return to Dominion space." The remaining Krill ships jumped away into hyperspace one by one. The battle was over. Diana sat in her command chair and felt the adrenaline slowly drain away, leaving her exhausted. "Casualties?" she asked quietly. 147 dead across all ships, 300 wounded. We lost the Tempest but saved most of her crew. The Relentless and Valiant are heavily damaged but operational. Too many dead, Diana thought, but alive because they had won. And 50,000 Avran were alive too. On the surface, Mira watched the last Krill ship disappear and felt something fundamental shift in her understanding of the galaxy. The humans had done what everyone said was impossible. They had defeated the Krill through sheer determination and tactics that no civilized species would use. "Council leader," Vel said quietly, "the galaxy is going to hear about this. Everyone is going to know that Deathworlders came when we called for help." Mira nodded slowly, still processing everything. "Yes, and they're going to learn that humans are not what anyone expected. They're dangerous, yes, but they're dangerous to those who prey on the weak. I think we just witnessed the beginning of something important." The Galactic Assembly Station hung in neutral space, a massive construction of metal and crystal that represented centuries of diplomatic tradition. Over 40 species maintained embassies there, and the Central Council chamber could hold representatives from every known civilization. It was a place where wars were prevented through dialogue and trade agreements were negotiated over months of careful discussion. Violence was forbidden within 10 million kilometers of the station. Ambassador Patricia Cole had never seen anything like it. She stood in an observation deck watching ships from dozens of worlds dock and depart, each one representing a culture humanity had barely begun to understand. Earth had only been granted observer status in the assembly 3 years ago, allowed to watch but not participate. Now 3 weeks after the Battle of Halcyon 7, she had been granted an emergency session to address humanity's actions. Patricia was 56 years old, a career diplomat who had spent her life resolving conflicts through words rather than weapons. She had argued against military intervention at Halcyon 7 initially, believing that diplomacy was always preferable to war. The fact that she had been wrong still bothered her, but she was professional enough to adapt. "Ambassador Cole," a synthetic voice announced through her translator, "the assembly is ready for you." The council chamber was enormous. Representatives sat in curved rows that rose up on all sides, creating an amphitheater effect. Patricia walked to the central platform feeling very small and very alone. Hundreds of alien eyes watched her, some with curiosity, many with fear, a few with barely concealed hostility. The session was called to order by the assembly moderator, a being called Counselor Thren from a species named the Eldari. They were one of the older civilizations, tall and elegant with pale skin and eyes that seemed to see through you. Thren's voice was cultured and cold. "Convene this emergency session to address the actions of the human military forces at Halcyon 7. The Krill Dominion has filed formal complaints of excessive violence, unauthorized military intervention, and violation of established territorial claims. Ambassador Cole, you may present humanity's defense." Patricia took a breath and began. She had prepared her speech carefully, but looking at the assembled representatives, she decided to speak from the heart instead. 3 weeks ago, the Avron Collective sent a distress signal. They were under attack. 50,000 civilians were being bombed and threatened with enslavement. They asked for help. My government reviewed that request and made a decision. We chose to respond, not because we expected anything in return, not because we had political interests in that sector. We responded because people were dying and we had the capability to save them. You had no authority to intervene, Thren interrupted. The Krill Dominion had legitimate territorial claims in that region. Your interference has destabilized an entire sector. Legitimate claims? Patricia felt her temper rising but kept her voice level. They were murdering civilians. If that's legitimate by galactic standards, then your standards are morally bankrupt. The chamber erupted in noise. Some representatives shouted agreement, others protest. Thren called for order, his expression darkening. You speak as if morality is simple, Thren said once the chamber quieted. But galactic politics are complex. The Krill Dominion has existed for thousands of years. They maintain order through strength. Yes, they are harsh, but they are predictable. Your species has been spacefaring for less than 50 years. You know nothing of the delicate balances that keep this galaxy from descending into total war. Then maybe those balances need to change, Patricia said quietly. You've built a society where the strong prey on the weak, and everyone else looks away because it's easier than fighting. You call that civilization? We call it cowardice. The chamber went silent. Patricia knew she had just insulted basically every species present, but she was committed now. Let me tell you about Earth, she continued. Our planet is what you call a Class 12 death world. Everything there tried to kill us. The weather, the wildlife, the diseases. We survived by learning to work together, to protect each other, to fight when necessary and show mercy when possible. We made mistakes, terrible mistakes. We fought wars that nearly destroyed us, but we learned. And one thing we learned is that civilization isn't measured by how peaceful you are. It's measured by how you treat those who can't defend themselves. A new voice spoke up from the assembly. It was Mira, the Avron Council leader. She had been invited to testify. If I may speak, Councillor Thren? The council recognizes Representative Mira. Mira stood, her luminescent skin flickering with emotion. I was there. I watched the humans fight. Yes, they were violent. Yes, they used tactics that seemed brutal. But they came when no one else would. The Eldari expressed sympathy but offered no aid. The United Federation closed their communication channels. Every civilized species abandoned us because helping was dangerous. Only the Deathworlders cared enough to take that risk. Another representative stood, a small being from a species Patricia didn't recognize. I am Cal of the Nari Consortium. 7 years ago, our colony sent a distress signal. We were being raided by Krill forces. No one came. We lost 15,000 people to slavery. When I heard that humans responded to the Avron call, I felt hope for the first time in years. Perhaps the galaxy doesn't have to accept cruelty as the price of peace. More voices joined in. Species that had been victimized by the Krill or other aggressive powers. Species that had sent distress calls that went unanswered. The assembly chamber became chaotic as decades of suppressed grievances poured out. Thren called for order again, but his authority was slipping. He looked at Patricia with something like respect mixed with concern. Ambassador Cole, you have made your point. But you must understand the position this puts us in. If we endorse your actions, we set a precedent. Any species could justify military action by claiming humanitarian concerns. It could lead to chaos. With respect, Councillor Thren, you already have chaos. You just hide it behind diplomatic language. You let people die so you can maintain your comfortable positions. Patricia pulled up a holographic display. These are the documented distress calls sent in the last 20 years. Over 300 of them. Would you like to know how many received meaningful assistance? She didn't wait for an answer. 12, less than 4%. The rest were ignored or resulted in empty diplomatic protests. You've built a system where calling for help is almost pointless because no one will come. The chamber was quiet again. Patricia could see representatives looking at each other, uncomfortable with the truth being laid bare. So here's what I propose, Patricia continued. Humanity would like to form a mutual defense pact. Any species that wants protection, that wants to know someone will come when they call for help, can join. We'll provide military training and assistance. In exchange, we ask for cooperation. trade agreements, and the understanding that we're all in this together. You're proposing an alliance against the established powers, Thren said carefully. No, I'm proposing an alliance for everyone who's tired of being afraid. The Krill Dominion can join too if they want. All they have to do is stop enslaving people. Before Thren could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed. A technician rushed to the moderator and whispered urgently. Thren's face went pale. We have a situation, he announced. Long-range sensors have detected a massive fleet entering the galaxy from dark space. Unknown configuration, estimated over 500 vessels. They are broadcasting a message. The message played through the chamber's speakers. The voice was cold and mechanical, speaking in a language the translator struggled with. This is the Wraith Collective. We have returned to harvest the younger species. Surrender your resources and populations peacefully, or they will be taken by force. You have one galactic cycle to prepare. Resistance is inadvisable. The chamber erupted in panic. Representatives were shouting, some were fleeing. Patricia stood on the platform watching the chaos and felt a strange calm settle over her. This was it. This was the moment that would define humanity's place in the galaxy. She activated her communication device and contacted Diana Ross, who was still commanding the fleet at Halcyon 7. Admiral, we have a situation. Diana's response was immediate. I heard the broadcast. What are our orders? Patricia looked around at the panicking assembly and made a decision. Prepare for war, and contact Earth. Tell them to mobilize everything we have. The galaxy is about to learn what Deathworlders do when someone threatens our friends. Thren appeared beside her, his earlier hostility gone, replaced by fear. Ambassador, the Wraith have appeared every 900 years. They've never been defeated. The last time they came, a dozen civilizations were exterminated. Even the Eldari barely survived. Patricia looked at him calmly. Counselor, has anyone ever tried fighting them the way humans fight? No. Civilized warfare is ineffective against them. Good, Patricia smiled grimly. Then they're about to get a very unpleasant surprise. Because humans don't do civilized warfare. We do whatever it takes to win. 6 months had transformed the galaxy in ways no one could have predicted. Haven Station, built in orbit around a strategically located moon, buzzed with activity as ships from 24 species conducted joint military exercises. The Avern had contributed their advanced sensor technology. The Nari provided their expertise in stealth systems. Smaller species offered what they could, whether it was manufacturing capacity or scientific knowledge. And humanity provided what they did best, the knowledge of how to fight and survive. Diana Ross, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, walked through the station's command center reviewing battle plans. Her hair had gone grayer in the past months and new lines marked her face. The weight of preparing an entire sector for war had aged her visibly, but her eyes were still sharp, still determined. Admiral, we have updated intelligence on the Wraith fleet, Raj reported, pulling up holographic displays. They've entered the Outer Rim and are systematically consuming resources from uninhabited systems. Current trajectory suggests they'll reach civilized space in approximately 3 months. What do we know about their capabilities? Diana asked. Dr. Tanaka, who had been studying all available data on the Wraith, stepped forward. They're old. Really old. Their technology is at least 10,000 years more advanced than anything in the current galactic community. Energy weapons that can cut through our best shields like paper. Ships that can regenerate damage. Artificial intelligence that can outthink most organic species. They're basically everything we're not prepared to fight. But they've been dormant for 9 centuries, Diana mused. That's a long time. Technology changes. Tactics change. The historical record suggests they don't change, Raj said grimly. They show up, they harvest what they want, and they leave. Any resistance has been crushed efficiently. The Eldari lost 70% of their population the last time. They only survived because the Wraith got what they wanted and left. Diana studied the tactical displays and felt a familiar cold determination settling in. Then we make sure they don't get what they want this time. What's the status of our Alliance fleet? 216 ships from 23 species, Raj reported. The Eldari have contributed 40 vessels, but they're keeping another 100 in reserve near their homeworld. They don't believe we can win. They're hedging their bets, Diana said. Can't blame them. If I didn't know humans better, I'd probably do the same. What about our special preparations? Raj smiled grimly. The star in the Kalos system is ready. Dr. Tanaka's team has been working with Avran scientists on the final calculations. If we can lure the Wraith fleet there, we can trigger a controlled stellar collapse. It won't destroy their entire armada, but it should take out a significant portion. Weaponizing a star, Diana said softly. 6 months ago, the galaxy thought we were barbaric for using nuclear weapons. Now we're teaching them to turn suns into bombs. Desperate times, Dr. Tanaka said without apology. The Wraith won't negotiate. They won't surrender. They're not even really alive in the traditional sense. They're machines, or something close to it. This isn't a war we can win through honor or clever diplomacy. It's a war of survival, and humans are very good at survival. The door to the command center opened and Mira entered, accompanied by several other representatives from the Alliance. The Avran Council leader had changed in the past months. She moved with more confidence now, and her luminescent skin had taken on deeper colors. War had hardened her, though Diana could still see the gentle being underneath. Admiral Ross, the Council has completed their review of your battle plan, Mira said formally. Then her expression softened slightly. They think you're insane, but they've authorized it anyway. We've come too far to back down now. Thank you, Council Leader, Diana said. I know this hasn't been easy for your people. My people are building weapons, Mira said quietly. We're training soldiers. We're preparing to kill, things we swore we would never do again. But you've taught us something important, Admiral. Peace maintained through fear isn't real peace. It's just delayed violence. If we want true peace, sometimes we have to fight for it. Over the next weeks, the Alliance fleet gathered at Haven Station. It was a strange collection of vessels. Sleek Avran ships with advanced sensors, heavy human cruisers bristling with railguns, small fast Nari corvettes, larger vessels from species that had rarely engaged in warfare before. Each ship represented a choice to stand and fight rather than flee or surrender. The Wraith reached the first inhabited system, 2 months and 3 days after their initial message. The planet Seals, home to 6 billion souls, broadcast desperate pleas for help as massive Wraith vessels descended through the atmosphere. The harvesting began methodically, and billions of people vanished into the Wraith ships, processed for resources or study or purposes no one fully understood. The Alliance fleet received the transmissions and felt their collective resolve harden. This was what they were fighting against, not for territory or resources or political power. They were fighting for the right to exist. When the Wraith fleet moved toward the galactic core, the Alliance fleet met them at the Kalos system. Diana stood on the bridge of her new flagship, the Indomitable, and watched the enemy approach. The Wraith vessels were massive and organic-looking, like they had been grown rather than built. They moved with an eerie grace that made them beautiful and terrible at the same time. 517 Wraith vessels confirmed, Raj reported. They're detecting our fleet and adjusting course to engage. Good, Diana said calmly. All ships assume attack formation. Remember the plan. We're not here to win. We're here to survive long enough to spring the trap. The battle began badly. The Wraith weapons tore through Alliance shields with contemptuous ease. Ships exploded or were disabled within seconds of engagement. The Alliance fleet fell back, appearing to retreat in disarray. It was working. The Wraith pursued, confident in their superiority. They're entering the target zone, Raj announced. 70% of their fleet is within the kill radius. Diana took a breath. This was it. Everything came down to this moment. Dr. Tanaka, activate the stellar collapse device. All ships. Emergency jump on my mark. Deep inside the star of the Kalos system, devices humanity had built with Avran guidance came online. The star had been carefully destabilized over the past months, and now the devices pushed it over the edge. The nuclear fusion at its core stuttered and collapsed. Jump now, Diana ordered. The Alliance fleet activated their jump drives simultaneously and vanished into hyperspace. The Wraith, realizing something was wrong, tried to follow, but they were seconds too slow. The star collapsed and then exploded in a supernova that lit up half the sector. The blast wave expanded at relativistic speeds, consuming everything in its path. Wraith vessels were vaporized instantly. Others were caught by the expanding shell of stellar matter and torn apart. Out of 517 Wraith ships, only 143 escaped. The Alliance fleet dropped out of hyperspace 10 light-years away and watched the supernova through their sensors. Ships were damaged. Some crews were injured or dead, but they had survived, and they had hurt the enemy badly. Casualty reports coming in. Raj said quietly. 73 ships destroyed or 2 damaged to continue. 42,000 dead across all species. Too many, Diana thought. But alive because they had fought. And billions were still alive who would have been harvested. The Wraith response was immediate and vicious. The remaining ships changed tactics, splitting up to attack multiple targets simultaneously. The Alliance fleet, already battered, couldn't be everywhere at once. Systems fell. Populations were harvested. The war ground on for weeks, brutal and desperate. Then something unexpected happened. The Wraith suddenly withdrew, not defeated but retreating back toward dark space. Alliance sensors tracked them, leaving the galaxy entirely. In the command center of the Indomitable, now heavily scarred from battle, Diana and her staff tried to understand what had happened. Did we win? Mira asked, looking exhausted. She had commanded Avran forces throughout the campaign and had seen her people fight and die for the first time in generations. I don't think so, Diana said slowly. I think we convinced them the cost was too high. The Wraith harvest younger species because it's efficient, but we made it inefficient. We made them bleed for every system. They could keep fighting, probably eventually win, but the price would be higher than the gain. So they just left. Mira couldn't believe it. For now, Dr. Tanaka said. They'll probably be back in another few centuries. But that gives us time to prepare, time to build better defenses, time to become stronger. The aftermath of the war was complex. The Alliance had proven that the Wraith could be fought, even if they couldn't be completely defeated. The galactic political landscape shifted dramatically. Species that had maintained neutrality for millennia were suddenly interested in mutual defense pacts. The Krill Dominion, humbled by their earlier defeats and impressed by the Alliance's performance, requested negotiations. 3 months after the Wraith withdrawal, the Galactic Assembly held a ceremony at Haven Station. Diana stood beside Mira and representatives from all the Alliance species as Ambassador Patricia Cole addressed the gathering. We didn't win, Patricia said honestly. We lost millions of people. We lost ships and stations and entire colonies, but we survived. And we survived because we chose to stand together, because we decided that some things are worth fighting for. She paused, looking around at the assembled representatives. The Wraith will probably return someday. Other threats will emerge. But now we know something important. We know that we don't have to face them alone. We know that when someone sends a distress call, help will come. That's the promise of this alliance. That's what makes us different. Later, in a quiet moment, Diana stood in an observation deck with Mira, watching ships from a dozen species moving around Haven Station. The Avran counselor spoke softly. You changed us, Admiral. We were so proud of our pacifism, our civilization, but we learned that sometimes civilization needs defenders. Sometimes peace requires warriors. Diana nodded slowly. And you changed us too, Council Leader. We came here thinking we knew how to fight, but you taught us what we were fighting for. It's not about winning battles. It's about protecting people who need protection. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Mira asked the question that had been bothering her. What happens now? Humans are heroes across the galaxy, but you're also feared. People see what you're capable of, and they're not sure whether to feel grateful or terrified. Diana smiled slightly. We keep doing what we've always done. We survive. We help when we can. We fight when we must. Earth might be a death world, but that doesn't make us monsters. It makes us survivors, and maybe that's exactly what this galaxy needs. The final report on the war noted that humanity had achieved something remarkable. They had answered a simple distress call and somehow changed the fundamental nature of galactic society. Species that had avoided violence were now training militaries. Civilizations that had hidden from aggressors were now standing their ground. The galaxy was learning the lessons that Earth had learned through millennia of struggle. The distress signal had asked for help. The Deathworlders had heard it as a war call. And in answering that call, they had taught the galaxy that survival wasn't about being peaceful or civilized by traditional definitions. Survival was about refusing to give up, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, and fighting for a future worth living in. Humanity had come to the stars carrying all their flaws and violence and stubborn determination. The galaxy had expected conquerors or barbarians. Instead, they found something more complicated and more valuable. They found allies who would stand with them when no one else would. They found warriors who fought not for glory or conquest, but for the simple right of all beings to live free from fear. The SOS had been for help. The Deathworlders took it as a war call. and the galaxy would never be the same.